Uncle Go Clips. Kind of don't know what you're doing, and as we chatted before about mentoring, it helps a lot when someone can kind of narrow it down to show you where to go and how to start
Mm.
it. I also did a lot of YouTubing about it to kind of like find information about it. I find Pat Flynn has some really good videos there on how to start a podcast and
Yeah.
just like all the stuff connected
Yeah,
to it.
and the other thing is that when you started this podcasting, maybe that was I could have added this a few minutes earlier, but I will add it now. So when you start a podcast, you should also realize that you're not going to be a success story from scratch, right? So depending on which field and which things you're talking about. So if you're talking about tech, for example, this is very abstract, and you're not going to find a lot of people who are just going to come to your podcast and start watching you or subscribing. So if you're talking about beauty, these things are very famous. People love those kind of stuff. Women love those kind of stuff. And if you're talking about, let's say, politics or something like that, people are also very into that. They want to hear your opinion about all this kind of stuff. But if you're into tech, for example, it's going to take a while until people until you get noticed, and it's you have to be very patient, and you have to realize that it's not just, oh, I just did a video about a tutorial about HTML and nobody's looking at my videos. Like, well, there are hundreds and hundreds of other people who have tutorials, and the other thing is that soft or tech is it's not something the everyday average person is interested in. So you shouldn't be surprised that it's going to take a long time before people start noticing you on YouTube or whatever you're doing. So you have to be bringing out something on a regular basis, right? Um, and don't if you have like a topic that takes an hour, don't talk about everything in an hour and just push it. Like, you know what? You know what? Every 2 weeks, I'm gonna push like 25% of what I 25% every 2 weeks. I'm going to push it. So just make sure that you have less like a continuity into it. Like, so when people look into your channel and say, okay, last week he brought something out, and 2 weeks before that he brought something. Okay, that's cool. But if you like, okay, bro, the last time he uploaded something was like 2 months ago, right? And that 2 months, he's talk about something for 2 hours, like so just break them down into little pieces and just uploading them little by little, and yeah.
Yeah, I agree on that. And I feel that a lot of people have very skewed perceptions on how this whole YouTube and podcasting works. I remember after 4 months on YouTube, I had some of the friends chat up to me and they were like, "So how much are you earning from that?" And I'm like,
Like
"I'm not earning anything from this
zero,
thing. It's
zero.
so
Yeah,
what, next month are you gonna start earning money?" And I'm like, "No, and maybe like a
zero.
few years, you know." So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that everybody that's big on YouTube kind of invested a lot of time and a lot
yeah,
of
a long
effort
time.
into it. And another thing that people don't take into account, professional YouTubers do it full time, so they
Yeah,
have a lot of more time to kind of set everything up, to prepare, to do the research, to make the episode just right, and to kind of prepare future episodes as well. I'm kind of using the weekends for it. I don't know about you, but usually during the day, and I want to talk a little bit about the daily routine. Usually during the day, I have some time in the evening, and I try to do like 1 or 2 hours when I get a chance. But you know how life is. Usually stuff gets in the way, so don't do it every day, right?
yeah.
But yeah, here and there, and then just gradually building. And the first thing that I noticed is that YouTube gives you like a really cool statistical overview on how your videos are performing. And I actually fell in love with data and numbers and statistics through YouTube. Like we had it in college, and I was like, oh, statistics, you know, especially when I heard about the book, like How to Lie with Statistics. You know, people use stats to kind of promote things, and it can be so easily manipulated. So I had a very skeptical view on every time when I read like, oh, 75% of voters did this, you know, and I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, all right, cool, you know. And now when I see hard data from like views, minutes, all of that. I kind of fell in love with it, and I love checking my stats and seeing like what works, what can be improved, like what doesn't work, and you get a lot of feedback from that, like what to do more, what to do less. And I started implementing it on a few videos, and it actually does work. Like things that you improve gradually upon start to perform better. So it kind of filters. So YouTube kind of filters out what you're doing well and what you're not doing well,
Mm,
in a sense. Like nothing is 100%, right? Because you haven't touched the whole audience yet. Like you haven't reached millions of people. So some things will change with time. But I feel it gives you like really this like even like a mentorship approach, like where it says like, all right, this works, try that, right? So I feel that people who are kind of like thinking of how to improve maybe should focus more on their own data and
mm.
take what's working and implementing that. I had a really interesting chat with a friend of mine also called Dominic, also a software developer. He's working in Java. Um, we read a lot of these self-development books, and there's this Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. I don't know if you heard about that, but it basically says that 80% of your results come from only the 20% of the most valuable things that you do, and the other are actually not that valuable. So with most of the things that you're doing, you're kind of wasting your time,
Mm,
and that principle can be derived in so many places. Like in a company, like 20% of the sales people are the top earners in the company, and they earn more than roughly 80% of the company, and
mm,
you can find that principle all over the place. It's really cool. I really recommend the book, and on YouTube it works as well. Like if you take your two top performing videos, um, and just create like a version 2 or part 2 or something similar on that topic, it will get a lot more performance out of it. And I watched a lot of these YouTube reports from YouTubers that do it full time and that earn money through it.
mm.
Like 5 of their videos earn more than, like, I don't know how much, like 90% of the other videos probably as well. So it's kind of the 80-20 rule there as well. And it seems like a really good like direction, like to narrow it down your focus. Have you been looking into your data, and do you apply it also on podcast as well?
To be honest, I haven't. To be honest, I haven't, and I think this is something because this is not the first time hearing from you. I've heard it from all the YouTubers saying it's very important to look into the statistics, looking for what works, and but I haven't took the time to really look into it, and I definitely should do that. And the other thing I also noticed when I started YouTube was I always thought that those professional YouTubers or people who are on YouTube in general, when they are talking about certain topics, certain things on YouTube, and maybe the video is an 8 minutes video, right? And they just talk for 8 minutes, and after 8 minutes, they'll say, "Hey, thanks for listening, goodbye, stop," right? And I was like, "Okay, cool, I'm gonna try that out." So I pressed record on my camera and I started talking, and I was like just sometimes mispronounce something, forget the next thing, and I would start all over again and talk again, start all over again. And I was like, how is it possible that these people can talk for 8 minutes straight without mispronouncing anything, without any or or forgetting anything? This is impossible. I can do this forever. It's like, so it was so, and then I figured out that they're just like, it was edited, right?
Mhm.
And they just taking the chunks of different parts and then attach them together and then show you the entire thing. And so I noticed this one. The way I noticed that is someone was talking like this, and all of a sudden he was there talking, and then it was like
Yeah,
changing position. And I
position.
noticed, oh, that's he's not in the same position all the time. So I noticed all these things are like the uh these are your pieces that were put together. And I was like, oh, so all this time I was thinking that I have to talk for 8 minutes straight without pause and without and so that's something that really helped me a lot. So when you diving into YouTube and doing all this stuff, you have to be aware of that too, right? You have to know that these people, there's also they're just human beings like you, and it took a lot of time. Like you said, many of them are doing it full time now, and so they can prepare when they're doing your podcast. They have a clear mind, right? They didn't want, they're not coming from work, hustling, coming from work and dressing up and bringing the kids to bed and everything. And okay, it's time for the podcast. Oh, let's go. No, they sat there the entire day preparing for it, and now it's time to go. And for us, like for the average person, for us right now, it's like we have other things, right? You come from work, your head is already like, let's say, toxinated with all of our different stuff. And when you stand in front of the camera and you can't even pronounce your name right. Sometimes, sometimes I'm standing in camera, I'm just like, my brain is already hurting from work, from solving problems at work. And now I'm sitting in front of a computer, sitting in front of a camera, and I'm trying to speak, talk about certain things. I'm like, man, my brain is, and so it's how it is, right? So you just have to be aware of those kind of things, that it's going to be really difficult, and just try baby steps. And when you getting prepared, when I how I prepare myself, for example, is if I know that, okay, today in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks I want to talk about how to become a better developer. I want to do 8 minutes video how to become a better developer, or which learning resources, good learning resources are out there to become a better developer, or how to dive into tech or whatever. What I try to do is not to sit down, look for, okay, this evening I'm going to sit down for 3 hours and I'm going to write everything down. It's like, I tried that before. It didn't work out. For me, it didn't work out. What I like to do is like, every day for 15 minutes, I'll just write down a chunk of what I'm going to say, the script. And then after 15 minutes, quit, do something else. Next day, another 15 minutes. And after maybe a week, oh, I'm done. Cool. Nice. I'm done. Okay, right, cool. The nine, now I can do other things. So if you stand there for 3 hours and you're just there and just trying to do all these things by for 3 hours straight, first of all, you're gonna have a lot of mistakes. There's one thing that I notice is that whenever I write down, sit down for, like say, 3 hours for, and try to write a script. I do that, for example, in the evening, nights, when my kids, wife, they're already asleep, and I'm writing down things. I'm like, man, this is really cool. It's a really cool script. It's going to be really nice. I can't wait to bring it out there. And then next morning, I look into the script, and it's so much gibberish. I'm like, what are you talking about? Why are you talking
Yeah.
about? What are you talking? Why are you writing about these things? What do you mean by that? It doesn't make any sense. And so it's just like I just start, okay, 15 minutes, I'm gonna write this, and then just do that for a week, and you're like, oh, I'm done. All right, it's time to get let's get rolling, let the camera rolling, and so
Yeah, for me, the biggest shock was actually how time consuming everything is.
oh
When you,
man,
like you said, like an 8 minute video, you think that somebody would spend like maximum 20 minutes getting it done, right? But
oh
it's like
man,
you can sometimes spend like a whole week working on a 8 minute video, and even more. Like I watch some YouTubers that are doing it full time, and they say like, "Oh, I've been working on this 3 days," and they don't mean it like you and me in the evening for like an hour, but it's like 3 full days. And I'm like,
yeah,
wow, like, but then of course you can see the results when you watch a video like that. It's really polished. It has like very minimum mistakes. Everything is in its place. It has a nice flow to it. So I feel it's a process of self-development, and that's one of the things where I want to focus on in this podcast a lot. Like teaching people that actually things don't come overnight. Like for those that do, those are unicorn
yeah.
once in a million. Like I'm sure it happened to some
It
people,
happened. They
right?
exist. Yeah, they're here.
Yeah, like fine, all right. But for 99.9997%
Yeah,
of the people, it probably won't go that way. It'll probably
and
be
yeah,
years of hard work until they get
mm,
there. So
and
I think that people have to be ready for that, you know?
My very first video on YouTube, it's like a 6 minutes or 7 minutes video, like the introduction video. Hey everybody, my name is Nathaniel. I'm an iOS developer from Berlin, Germany. Welcome to my YouTube channel. That first video, it was like I said, 6 or 7 minutes. Do you know how long it took me? Guess how long it took me to do that video?
Probably a few hours.
2 months.
Wow.
2 months. That was my first video. It was crazy difficult for me to get that video on. Man, the lighting, autofocus, my camera back then was like
Yeah,
tripping
shooting and
around.
reshooting.
Oh my goodness. I almost quit. After that video, I'm like, I don't want to do this again. And this is so painful. Man, the lighting was not correct, the audio was not correct. I forgot to press record. I was not in focus, and then I had to sell some, return some devices because they were not working the way I expected. So it was such a pain. Like I said, for 6 minutes, it took me 2 months to finish. So you might be thinking, so were you sitting there for 2 months and tried to do that? No, of course I would like record it, and I'm like, okay, it's enough for today, and I will pull my T-shirt, wear the exact same T-shirts, sit on the right same position, and then try it again. And so in the video, it looks like, oh, this guy just did it for 6 minutes straight, easy. Like it was 2 months. It took me 2 months for me to do that video. It's crazy.
Yeah, but for everybody listening who's thinking of starting their YouTube channel or podcast, with time it gets faster. Like
Yeah,
you kind of
exactly.
get into it more. I
Yeah.
noticed that editing now takes me a lot less time than it used
Mm.
to. Like I was afraid to do like a small cut because I was like, oh, what was gonna happen, you know? Plus, I've never done editing or any like audio, like nothing with basically any content material. And thanks to Gary Vee and listening to a bunch of his videos, I kind of got convinced that if you're working on a project, if you're selling something, if you're basically want to kind of be more integrated in the online space of the business era, you kind of have to be online. And if you go back like 2 years beforehand, like it's hard to find pictures of me online. There's probably like 20 pictures on Facebook, and after that I was like, all right, cool, I'll give it a try. And at the start it was like really weird, like even holding the camera in front of your face, it was strange. Like I've never done it. Like
Oh,
every time when somebody took photos of me, it was my parents being like, oh, let's take a family photo, and I was like, oh god, no. And after a while you kind of get used to it, and then posting content and then trying to improve everything. It's a whole journey, and I kind of like it, but I didn't like it at the start as much as I like it now.
mm.
And I think the biggest was actually uploading the first few videos on YouTube. That's where I kind of got hooked. And then the next one was falling in love with data. And
Mm.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah, it's amazing. How when I started, like I said, after those 2 months for that 6 minutes video, then later on it was like 4 hours or 6 hours, and now if I'm doing a video, it's like an hour and a half. I'm done, right?
mhm,
So it's from time to time it gets better. You start understanding the tricks and how to manipulate your video so that even if you do mistakes, even if don't you say something you shouldn't have said in a certain time, you can like do some editing and it just looks very natural. So it takes a lot of time, but if you put the work into it, put the time into it, you can get it's gonna.
hey, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see the full version, go to the Uncle Gold Podcast YouTube channel or watch the next clip.